Good day, Potterheads. Thank you for visiting the page. Here we are with a new chapter for Backward with Purpose, Part 1, Always and Always, by Dead Woodpecker. We are on Chapter 45, Interlude, Severus Snape.
Chapter 45, Always and Always. Chapter text. Harry opened his eyes. He was lying on a bed in a small, windowless room that was nevertheless filled with a warm light. He felt as though he had just woken up from a nap. The room felt familiar, as though he had spent a lot of time here, but he had never seen it before in his life. But it felt almost like home, in the way that Ron's room at the Burrow had been, or the boys' dormitory at Hogwarts. It wasn't quite home, but it was close enough. The fear and the pain had fled, though Harry felt a dull ache in his belly when he remembered what he had left behind. Ginny, Ron, Hermione, Luna, all the Weasleys, Sirius, Remus, and Tonks, Dumbledore, even Snape. The room seemed darker all of a sudden. Harry stood up, figuring that he might as well explore wherever he was, and as soon as he did, the sound of indistinct voices reached his ears. His heart leapt in his chest before he fully realized that he recognized one of them. Then, listening hard, he knew exactly who was waiting for him. He looked down at himself, grimacing when he realized that he was naked. Despite his impatience and his desire to see them, he found himself really hoping that dead people didn't walk around naked all the time. As soon as the thought crossed his mind, he noticed robes hanging off the bedpost. He grabbed them and pulled them on. Then he flung open the door and walked down the hall, feeling too many different emotions to process them all. Excitement warred with sadness. Curiosity warred with the desire to not be here just yet. And he was more than half afraid of meeting his parents for the first time in living memory. And he was thrilled beyond belief to see Neville again. They were obviously watching for him, for as soon as he caught sight of them, his mother was rushing toward him with her arms outstretched, and she nearly knocked him over with the force of her hug. "Oh, love," she wept. Harry patted her gently on the back. "My arms have been empty for so long. Let him breathe, Lily," his father said gently. He disentangled them and had his turn for a hug. Harry looked over his shoulder to see Neville beaming at him. "Hey, Neville," said Harry. "Hey, Harry," said Neville. Tears stung Harry's eyes, but he didn't really care. He already missed Ginny and the others fiercely, but at least he wasn't alone. "I didn't know it would be like this." He laughed a little. "Maybe I wouldn't have been so afraid." "Listen, Harry," his mom said quietly. "Love is always and always. Our bodies may turn to dust, but love never ends. Therefore we never end. Death is nothing to fear, love." "I know that," Harry said. "I'm here, aren't I?" "You fear losing more people to death," Neville said. "But really, you haven't lost us forever. You're just going to have to say goodbye for a time." Harry was confused. "But I'm dead too, aren't I?" "Not really," his dad said. "But the Deathly Hallows." Harry let his voice trail away in confusion. How was it possible that he wasn't dead? He didn't have any of the Hallows, let alone all three. "The Deathly Hallows had nothing to do with your survival last time," said his mom. "It was my sacrifice that did it, Harry. He took your blood, and you're tied to life while he lives." Harry felt the disorientation that involved being confronted a stolen memory, and he growled. "It was Merlin who did this, wasn't it?" he said. "It wasn't a question. He made me think I was going to die, didn't he?" Harry's eyebrows slammed together. "I thought I was going to die for years. That was really fucked up of him." "At this very moment, everyone you love is now immune to death from Voldemort's wand," his dad said. "You meant to die for them. You did the same thing for them that your mother did for you. If you had known that you would survive, they would not have had that protection." It clicked into place. Dumbledore had always claimed that with magic, intent was most important. It enhanced the strength of spells. It allowed people to do things that they might not have otherwise. Even Bellatrix Lestrange had claimed long ago in another lifetime that he had to mean it. She'd been speaking of the unforgivables, but it fit here as well. While he still felt a lingering annoyance, his brief flare of rage at the torment Merlin had put him through was dampened by the fact that his loved ones were safe. He felt a churn of guilt when he met Neville's eyes. Neville Dash. Don't you dare. Harry, Neville said sharply. My death was not your fault. There was nothing you could have done. And I meant it when I said that I have no regrets. Harry, my parents are here too. Harry searched his open, honest face. Neville had never been able to lie worth a damn. But the only thing Harry saw was peace. I'm still going to miss you, said Harry. All three of you. I'm going to wish you were there with me. But don't you dare keep blaming yourself for why we aren't, his dad commanded. I wanted to tell you that for so many years, son. But if I hadn't been Dash... Stop, his mom said firmly. You were just a baby. My baby. Voldemort is to blame for the losses you've suffered. And it's time you stop feeling guilty for being the only person who could defeat him. You just need to realize that people love you as much as you love them, Neville said. And yeah, I might not have died if we hadn't been friends. But I don't regret a single moment. It was worth it. Harry closed his eyes, his mind whirling. How many times had he thought that very thing in the last few days? It was worth it. They were worth it. He had never really considered that people might still consider protecting him with their own bodies worth it even after they were dead. It was a very humbling feeling, and the guilt he carried that never really went away began to recede. Your time is almost up, said his mom. Unless you don't want to stay here, do you? Harry immediately thought of Ginny. I'm sorry, but Dash. Don't apologize, said his dad. We want you to live your life. I want 3 grandchildren. His mom leaned over and stroked his hair. The smile she gave him was a bit watery. Minimum. Harry had to swallow several times before the lump in his throat disappeared and he could speak again. I'm sure Ginny and I could arrange something like that. All 4 of them stood up in the same moment. Harry knew that he would miss them. He'd look for them at his wedding, at the births of his children, at all his life's milestones. But they wouldn't be there. They'd be here, though, waiting for him to return after a long life. And the thought filled him with peace. Harry, we're so proud of you, his dad said earnestly. Having you for a son is really quite an honor. You're the bravest man I've ever met. Thanks, Dad, Harry said in a hoarse voice. He alternated staring at both of them. He wanted to memorize their features and the sound of their voices, and the way his mother kept hooking her hair behind her ears, and the way his father ruffled his hair every few minutes. And Mom, you both saved my life at the expense of your own, and it was a precious gift. He hugged his mother, and his father put his arms around the both of them. They stood like that for a long moment, and Harry thought it had been worth getting hit by the killing curse just to see them like this, and to feel them next to him for the first time that he could remember. I want you to tell Sirius something, his dad said suddenly. Oh, James, Lily rolled her eyes. He lost the bet. Lily, James said firmly. Tell Sirius that just because I'm dead doesn't mean that he's gotten out of honoring our bet. His first child is to be named Elvendork. Elvendork? Harry repeated, astonished. It's unisex, James winked. Harry laughed while his mother muttered something that sounded very much like marauders. His father beamed at him, pulled his mother to him with one arm, and kissed the top of her head. Harry turned to Neville, wanting the last image of his parents to be just that. Harry reached out his hand to shake Neville's, and then pulled him into a back-slapping hug. Live happily, Harry, Neville said simply. We're all going to miss you very much, Harry said. Neville smiled. And I'll be anticipating all of you. It's only goodbye for a little while. White mist surrounded Harry, and soon Neville's face was indistinct. He heard his dad's muffled voice one final time. We love you, son. Remember Elvendork. And then they were gone. HP, 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 HP. The first thing that Harry felt upon his return to life was the ground underneath his back and the shape of his wand against his chest. His ears rang with the shouts of laughter of the Death Eaters. Distantly, he could hear others screaming and thought it might be those that fought against Voldemort. Tom Riddle struggled to his feet. Apparently, he had fallen as Harry had. Don't try to talk, said Merlin immediately. They wouldn't hear you, but they'd see your lips move. Harry, who still felt slightly resentful that whoever Merlin was had so blithely toyed with his life, wanted to assure him that Harry was not quite as stupid as the other wizard apparently thought. He'd had no intention of opening his mouth, or indeed opening his eyes. Is he dead? Voldemort asked. Check to see, Wormtail. Imperio, whispered Merlin. Harry's eyes involuntarily fluttered behind his closed lids. Wormtail's steps faltered just a moment before he plodded onward. Harry felt grim satisfaction that Wormtail had seemed fearful just moments before. And Tom Riddle. He was afraid of Harry, even though he had just taken the killing curse without defending himself, which, he thought begrudgingly, had likely saved his life. He still thought a bit dodgy that Merlin had played him so well. Not to mention that he'd fooled Dumbledore. Harry had to admit that this did not concern him overmuch. In fact, he was slightly impressed. Questions battered his mind, and he did not allow a small inconvenience like Wormtail ascertaining whether or not Harry Potter drew breath distract him. But try as he might, he could make no sense of Merlin's presence. He had obviously stolen Harry's memories years ago. He briefly thought Merlin might be Lockhart, and had to hold back a snore of laughter. Why would he be there tonight? Or was it as he had said? He'd simply not wanted Harry to be alone at the end. If that was the case, Harry appreciated the sentiment behind it. But it seemed risky, hopping through time, just to keep a man company in the moments before he didn't die. He hid a grimace when Wormtail pried back an eyelid. "He is dead," shouted Wormtail. He scuttled back toward his master. The air around Harry's face moved. Merlin had bent over him. "I can't take the pain away," he said. This apparently distressed him. He sounded fretful. "But I can hold you immobile. You won't be able to scream. You won't have to hold it in. You can scream all you want, and your body won't betray you. Is this all right?" The Cruciatus Curse, Harry thought grimly. Of course Voldemort would want to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that he had bested Harry. Had he been given a chance to think about it, he would have come to this conclusion himself. "Yes," Harry breathed. A moment later, his bones became slack and useless, and he briefly wondered if Merlin actually was Lockhart and had removed all the bones from his body. But he got the impression, from the fact that he had broken into Gringotts, the Department of Mysteries, and successfully traveled through time without blowing up the world, that Merlin was not quite that incompetent. The pain hit a moment later. Every nerve in Harry's body was hit with wave after wave of agony. He tried to open his mouth to scream, but he could not feel his lips or his tongue. All he could feel was pain. His body was thrown up in the air once, twice, 3 times, and Harry feared that the agony would cause him to vomit, and then he would choke. There was a light brush on the top of his head, and Harry focused on what must have been Merlin's hand, offering comfort, the only thing that he could feel that wasn't making him scream his lungs out inside his head. "It's all right," Merlin murmured. "It's almost over. Just a few more moments. And then that fucker will be dead in less than an hour." "That fucker," he added viciously. Harry focused on that voice. He could hear it through the pain. And then the pain ended, as if a switch had been thrown. Harry panted for breath, or he would have done had his body been obeying his commands. The big muscles in his legs twitched. It was really driven home to Harry in that moment. The Cruciatus Curse was unforgivable for a reason. That did not, however, mean that Harry did not desire to use it on Voldemort and Wormtail, the last real enemies of his left alive. Merlin did not appear to be in any hurry to lift the spell that left Harry's body slack. 2 sets of purposeful footsteps. Harry could hear Sirius swearing under his breath. "Those in the castle will be easily subdued," said Snape. "They were quite distraught by Potter's death. They allowed me to escape." There was a thump and a muffled groan. "Allow me to kill him myself, my lord. You know I have long hated him." Despite the lingering aches from the pain and the slightly soporific effect it had had on him, Harry was ready to jump up and begin dueling Voldemort right at this moment. Sirius and Snape had walked into the den of snakes, and it was more agonizing than the Cruciatus Curse to not act. "Avada Kedavra!" Snape shouted, and Harry knew without having to look that the body that had fallen to the ground was not Sirius, but Wormtail's. The long-ago betrayal had finally been avenged. "You killed Lily," said Snape. "And James," said Sirius. "And Harry," they both said together. Harry tried to fight against the spell, for he did not see how either of them could survive this. His return from the dead would distract Voldemort long enough, and then they would duel. But he remained prone even as all hell broke loose. Voldemort screamed with rage. The earth shook beneath Harry's body, and explosions rocked the world. "Checkmate, asshole," Ron shouted. Harry lay on his back like an absurd turtle, unable to move. He hated this, but the spell held him captive. And then, "You will not desecrate his body again," said Dumbledore. His voice was low and even, but Harry could hear the danger in it. And as his body was lifted into the air, gently and surely, he savagely hoped that Dumbledore would tear Voldemort to pieces. Harry found himself floating away from the scene of the battle. Dumbledore's quiet words filled him with warmth, even as he longed to reveal that he was alive. The night was alive with the sound of fighting, screaming, and exploding giants, and he knew that those he loved must be feeling a terrible sort of despair. He'd heard it in Ron's voice when he had shouted, and it did not seem fair that he kept the fact of his own survival to himself. But Merlin had not yet released him from the spell. Harry privately thanked Dumbledore for putting him in a position that the field of battle was clear in his vision. He was far away enough to be safe in opening his eyes. He greedily searched the crowd of battling bodies for those he loved. His heart leapt whenever he saw a head of flaming hair. Ron was brilliant. Harry had not fully appreciated how talented of a wizard his best mate had become. But when Ron moved his wand, Death Eaters fell and did not get up. Hermione led a section of Muggleborns in driving the Dementors back to the forest. The patron uses, which had seemed so benign while Harry had been waiting for the curse, looked like wild animals as they harried the chill, dark-robed creatures. And Ginny was like a blazing light in a sea of darkness. She and Luna stood back to back, and both of them danced and wove and ducked around flashes of light. Harry could not take his eyes off her, and his heart pounded inside his chest as he watched her cut a swath through the Death Eaters. The Weasley twins were death from the sky, and once the giants had fallen, they focused on the flank of Voldemort's army. Their beating skills served them well as they attacked. Harry did not once see them miss and hit someone fighting for the right side. It took only a few minutes of watching for Harry to realize that Ron had planned well, utilized the strengths of those under his command, and that the larger army, Voldemort's, were going to be routed. He focused his attention, instead, on the battle between the two most powerful wizards in Britain, perhaps even in the Western Hemisphere. It was a thing of beauty and terror, and Harry's heart nearly failed in his chest time and again. Dumbledore had the Elder Wand, but Voldemort was cold and ruthless, and Harry was hard-pressed to predict who would win this duel. Lightning flashed from the Elder Wand, and even over the sound of battle, Harry could hear Voldemort's scream of pain. He countered it with impenetrable darkness that covered the ground where they dueled. Whatever had come with the darkness caused a roar of fury that Harry had never before heard from Dumbledore. Merlin said something. Harry realized with some surprise that he could move his lips again. "What?" he said. At just that moment, Dumbledore slashed open Voldemort's leg. Blood sprayed out, and Harry could see it, so fierce was the light of battle. "I understand what always and always means now," replied Merlin. "I mean, I really understand it. I keep finding that always and always means a hell of a lot more than I thought," Harry said vaguely. The desire to fight was keen and growing ever stronger, even as more and more of Voldemort's followers fell. People were already stopping. A small crowd huddled in a circle around the duel. Sirius and Snape were among them. "Let me up," said Harry. Merlin sighed. "I have to, don't I?" he said. "I bloody hate fate, you know." Harry let out a bark of laughter. "You're telling me this? I've had a prophecy hanging over my head since before I was born. My parents were murdered because of it. I don't think there's anything in the world that I hate more." "Me either," said Merlin. Now, Harry gritted his teeth. "Wheeling me up? I want to help them." Merlin did not say anything more, but moments later, the muscles in Harry's body, not just his face, began to respond to his commands again. His entire body tingled, as though it had been asleep, and his skin prickled. Harry lay there for a moment, relishing the feeling of his lungs contracting and his heart beating. It hit him again that once this night was over, the rest of his life stretched out before him. "Excuse me while I go kill an evil bastard," said Harry. But before he could stand up, something soft and silky landed on his chest. The invisibility cloak returned to him at last. Harry stood and threw it over himself with one fluid motion, and seconds later was sprinting down the hill to where to Dumbledore and Voldemort, two giants, one light and one dark, engaged in battle. They moved so quickly that Harry's eyes could barely track it. The earth beneath their feet was parched, and little pockets of flame burned within a protective circle. Giant hands made of dirt had wrapped themselves around Voldemort's ankles, and he fought to free himself even as he sent another curse at Dumbledore. The crowd gathered around the fighters had grown, and Harry realized with a start that the battle was essentially over. Death Eaters were scuttling away, and Voldemort was the only one left still fighting. And fight he did. Harry came close to some Muggleborns when Dumbledore gave a cry of pain that burbled on the end. His heart leapt in his chest, and he drew in a deep breath with the rest of the crowd. He pushed his way through the ring, hoping that Dumbledore was not. "Incarcerus!" Dumbledore shouted. Not for the first time, Harry cursed the fact that it was far too dangerous for Dumbledore to use the Elder Wand to kill. Violence begot violence, but Harry suddenly wished for a quick death, little though he deserved it, for Voldemort. Obviously flagging, Remus said in a low, urgent voice, "Take down the protective circle, Severus. We can all go help him." Snape began, but Harry interrupted him. "Allow me," he said, and pulled of his cloak. For several moments, the two older men could only stare, and without saying a word, Snape lifted his wand and let the wards come crashing down. Harry did not waste a moment, but shouted Sectum Sempra, and a long gash that dripped with blood appeared on the same arm that Harry had injured before. He shouted again, but this time Voldemort deflected it. A shield charm spread like a poisonous mushroom between the two of them. For almost an entire minute, Harry was the only one capable of movement and speech. Voldemort listed heavily to the side, and even Dumbledore's arm fell slack. Harry took advantage of the moment to find Ginny. She stood with Ron and Hermione, and her beautiful face was alight with joy. As soon as Voldemort was taken care of, Harry vowed to whisk her away and celebrate the wonder of having a lifetime of freedom to enjoy each other. You're dead," Voldemort said. Harry made a show of surprise. "I must be an extra concentrated ghost, then," he said flippantly. "But I'm fairly certain that I'm still alive." Harry lazily flicked his wand, and a yawning pit opened up beneath Voldemort's feet. Now that it was the moment, Harry felt all his lingering trepidation slip away. All of the Horcruxes had been destroyed, and Voldemort was just a man who shouted and twisted and fought to scramble to his feet. "You're a very stupid man, Tom," Harry said. The shield had dissipated, and creeping vines erupted from Harry's wand and wrapped around Voldemort's scrambling feet. A small part of Harry knew that it was dangerous to play with the other wizard, but the majority of him enjoyed it far too much to stop now. Do you want to know why? Your short-sightedness has cost you everything. We've tricked you every step of the way, and you've fallen into our hands just when we wanted you." "Lies!" Voldemort shouted. "You're already dead," Harry told him. "You can't kill me," he hissed. "I've taken steps, Dash." "Oh, you mean that you've created Horcruxes?" Harry asked. He was delighted to see the panic that flared in Voldemort's eyes. "All of them have been destroyed. The cup, the locket, the snake, the diary, the diadem, the ring. They're all gone." Voldemort's fury exploded, and the night was suddenly alive with shapes made of destructive fire. Dragons and chimeras and serpents raced to destroy all in its path. For one frozen moment, Harry was transported to his first lifetime, and he was powerless. "And oh," he shouted. He and Dumbledore and Ron and Ginny were the first to react. And Harry fought a battle with a flaming serpent. Sweat rolled down his face as he forced it into submission. The sky around him was like an inferno, and people were screaming, and just as suddenly they were gone. Voldemort stood on shaking legs, and it suddenly struck Harry that he was an old man. A twisted old man that was very much mortal. "Nice try," Harry said. "Sectum Sempra," he said again. Voldemort screamed and fell to one knee as blood gushed from his right leg. He staggered to his feet again. His face was twisted with fury and denial. Harry did not hesitate, but encased his enemy's feet in the ground. The spell held, though Voldemort fought it. He roared with animalistic rage. "Love will always, always conquer," said Harry. "The last enemy that shall be defeated is death," he quoted. "Even when someone's last breath is drawn, love goes on forever. For always and always." "You're a fool. You spent so much time trying to conquer death that you didn't realize that the one force in the entire world that can is the one thing that you shunned." Voldemort jeered. "You are so like Dumbledore," he said scathingly. He abandoned his attempt to free himself. They stood, for a moment, just pointing their brother wands at each other. "Love is pathetic. It's for the weak. It's for always and always," Harry said. "But you'll never be able to understand that." "Oh, I understand," Voldemort said. His face contorted into something like a smile, had that face still been human enough to smile. And before Harry could move, he'd shouted a word, and a sickly purple light came toward Harry. But it disappeared before it could strike, and then Voldemort had twisted his body and raised his wand toward Ginny, and the green light of the killing curse struck her right on the breast. Harry caught her before she fell. He did not even spare a glance to watch Voldemort struck with his own rebounding curse. He barely heard the body fall to the ground. He did not listen to the screams and shouts of those who did not realize that Ginny could not possibly be dead, because if there was anyone present that Harry's love would protect from death, it would be her. He meant to die for everyone there, but he'd come back for her. "Wake up, Ginny," he said softly. He cradled her in his arms. She drew in a deep breath, and her eyelashes fluttered open. He did not give her a chance to speak, but pressed his lips against hers in a kiss that was 1 part desperation and 3 parts joy. She returned his kiss with great fervor, and when they finally pulled away, Harry felt an intense burning inside his chest that was painful and wonderful all at once. Ron was the first to react. With a cry that sounded like a mixture of a shout and a sob, he wrapped his arms around them both, and for one glorious moment, it was just the 3 of them. They had lost so much, given everything they had, and a miracle had happened. Tears ran unabashedly down Ron's face. And then Hermione was there. And then Sirius, who lifted Harry off his feet and deafened him with laughter that sounded rich and unfettered. It was when he and Ginny were separated, her mother and father had pulled her away and into their arms after shaking Harry's hand, that Harry noticed something odd. Emotions swirled and rolled around him, and he halted midway through a shouted conversation with Tonks when he realized that he felt Ginny's elation that he, Harry, was alive. "What's wrong?" said Tonks. "Nothing," said Harry. His eyes found Ginny's. They were round with shock. "Everything is perfect. I can't believe it." He laughed. He felt so giddy that he wondered if he had gone mad. And he didn't much care. He felt another surge of joy that was not his own, and, abandoning Remus and Tonks in mid-congratulations, Harry made his way back to her. "Is that you?" they asked in unison. "I think so," Ginny said. She laid a hand on his breast. Harry started when she winced when he did the same. "You're hurt," he said. "Not really," she shrugged. Then she gave him a lopsided smile. "Oh, but I've got a scar to match yours. Can we go find out?" Harry grinned at her. He glanced around. Already, Kingsley was organizing people to take the fallen Death Eaters to the Ministry of Magic. Others huddled in groups, looking stunned and happy. Harry knew that he ought not to abandon everyone. He was certain that Ron and Hermione would need an explanation. They deserved one. But he and Ginny had both just survived the killing curse, and Harry thought they were entitled to a little alone time. She evidently felt the same, as she did not even put up a token resistance when he started to pull her away toward the castle. The room of requirement awaited them. Luna sat halfway up the hill. Her face was hidden in the shadows, but Harry would know that cloud of blonde hair anywhere. Harry stopped short when he saw her, suddenly remembering Merlin. He did not know what Merlin had changed. He would probably never know, and he was all right with that for the moment, though he suspected that his curiosity would come back fully when he had had a chance to process everything. "But for now, will you tell Merlin I said thank you for whatever he did?" Harry asked. "If you see him, you're welcome," said Merlin. Luna didn't say anything. "And thanks for giving me back my cloak," said Harry. There was an awkward moment while Harry teetered on the edge of begging for answers. But Ginny's impatience to be alone fired up his own impatience, and Harry resisted the urge to use magic to force Merlin to give up his secrets. It was the least he could do. And then they were walking very quickly, almost running, and Ginny burbled with laughter as they headed up the stairs. Harry practically dragged her behind him. His legs were far longer than hers, and whenever the moving staircases held them in one place, he kissed her with the passion that was rising swiftly inside them both. The door had barely shut before Harry had his wand out and had exposed her left breast. A cut in the shape of a lightning bolt bled freely, and he winced. "I barely feel it," Ginny said almost shyly. "Even a little pain is too much," Harry said. He narrowed his eyes in concentration and began to siphon the blood away. "I want to keep the scar," Ginny said. Harry looked up swiftly and saw that tears poured down her cheeks. "What's this?" he asked. "I'm just—" Ginny shrugged one shoulder. "What happened?" And Harry told her everything. His conversations with Merlin, his experience with his parents, everything. She listened as he slowly healed her cut, leaving a scar that matched his own. Normally, he would not like her flesh being marred in such a way, but he had to admit that it seemed fitting. He sat back on his heels, and the chair she was sitting on transformed into a bed. "Was that you or me?" Ginny asked slyly. "Both of us, I think," Harry said. He crawled up beside her as she lay back. What better way to celebrate our mutual survival of the killing curse? She grinned. Then her smile faded into something more contemplative, and she laced her fingers with his. "The moment you died, I had a sort of vision of you," she admitted. Harry gaped at her, and she continued. "We were making love, and you told me that even though you were gone, a little part of you would always be making love to a little part of me." Harry fell back. "I've never heard of anything like that before," he said. "I think it's partly why I can feel you now," she said, "and why you can feel me. I don't know, we'll have to ask Dumbledore, but it makes sense. And then when the curse hit me, I saw you again, and you gave me that cheeky grin and said you had work to do, and I felt this wonderful warmth all over my body. It was like you were within me." Harry leaned over and kissed her because he didn't know quite what to say. How did one respond to visions one's wife had about oneself? "I want to be within you right now." Harry moved on top of her and whispered in her ear. She chuckled against his lips. "Just promise me one thing. Anything. Let's not tell everyone that we had Merlin in our grasp again and did nothing about it."